The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You've always got time for Short Time.
Hey, it's Mario Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent Metcalf. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine. The one and only Chael Sonnen. And you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
Now for the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, going to head out to Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, and visit with the Associate Director of Athletic Communications from Penn, Chaz Dorman, a recent recipient of the National Wrestling Media Association's Division I College Sports Information Director of the Year. Chaz, we've known each other a long time. Your first appearance on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Welcome, sir.
I am very excited to be here. I've been waiting a long time for this call, and I'm excited to get after it.
Yeah, one thing, if people are having let's put a face or at least a pair of pants with a name. For those of you that want to know who Chaz is, so at the All-Star Classic, he was rocking some total Ben Franklin-style red pants. Any St. Patty's Day that Nationals falls on, he is the guy on the floor with the shamrock pants. Why the bold fashion statement, Chaz?
I think it's just part of my personality. You know, you got to stand out a little bit. There's a lot of people in this business and a lot of people at wrestling meets or any sports event. If you see me at the lacrosse field, I'm wearing pink shorts and things like that. And it's just kind of always been how I dressed. And I'm someone that tries to never stay too far away from taking what I do seriously. It's sports, it's fun, and you want to enjoy yourself while you're there. So why not give the people something good to look at while I'm running around trying to take photos and do whatever it is that I'm doing at that moment.
Well, and plus you're married too, and you work in the same athletic world with your wife, so you don't have to worry about dressing up to impress. You're married; you're taken care of there. Yeah,
that ship has sailed, and she, I bought high with my wife, and I outkicked my coverage, or however you want to call it. So, now I get to just kind of dress for myself, and I don't have to worry about, and trust me, she makes it well aware to anybody that comes up to her that she did not approve or did not dress me and did not see what I put on before I left the hotel room or the house that day. And she shakes her head just as much as maybe other folks do as they see me rolling around there.
Finishing up your 10th year with wrestling at Penn, and in the world of sports information, it is a transient type of industry. I wouldn't say nomadic, but definitely transient. And you've got people who are moving from job to job to job, looking for that dream job. You've been at Penn for 10 years working with wrestling. You've gone through 3 coaches. What is it about Penn that says, this is where we're staying?
I think it's become part of our family. My wife and I met in my second year, her first year at Penn. We're both working with the wrestling team. She's the athletic trainer. She's moved on from that team in the last year or so. But, from that point, it became part of our family, and it's something we've talked a lot about, and we're so invested in. And for me professionally, Penn's given me a great chance to grow and to kind of create my own path and move up in the ranks in our department. And so it's, if it's not broke, why fix it? And, I get to just kind of carve my own path out here, and I'm really appreciative of that. And I really believe in what Penn is about from a student athlete standpoint as well. Academics, athletics, community service. It's just a lot of the ideals I hold to myself personally, Penn represents. So it's a great fit for me, and it's been great for 10 years. And there's been a couple times I've been close to moving on, but at the end of the day, Penn's been where my heart's been, and I'm great to kind of continue that. And 10 years in one place is awesome. Like you said, it doesn't happen a lot. I feel like I'm really in a really good spot right now.
Yeah, from the line of sports information, when you get into an Ivy League school, you look at that type of situation. How quickly, when you see an opportunity to open up like this at an Ivy League school, which has that reputation, it's not the BCS or the Power 5, but it's still got its reputation. I mean, when you look back 10 years ago, it's like, okay, am I applying for this thing?
Yeah, it's as a student in high school, I applied to a couple Ivy League schools, and they didn't let me in. So I found a backdoor way to be on these campuses the last 10 years. And, again, I just was around that environment growing up in Massachusetts and had family members and friends that gone to Harvard. So So I knew what it was all about, and it spoke to me. And I don't think you think about it when you're applying for an internship as a senior in college, but once you kind of get on campus here and you realize that what it's all about and the caliber of student athlete you're working with and what they do, not just whether it's on a wrestling mat, but in the classroom and the conversations you have, you really get inspired kind of every day to keep going back to the office, because it's you're working with some high caliber kids, and you're proud to be a small part of what they're doing, and you're kind of speaking for the right things. And and at the end of the day, honestly, I've been lucky to not have so much of the negative stuff that gets in college athletics come across my plate. We're focused more on what's right with the sport, or any sport, and wrestling specifically here. But I'm not tied down with some of these things that you see at other schools. Or we've been fortunate, and I always knock on wood. We've had some instances, but it's not every day, and so it keeps you interested in what you're doing and coming back to the office.
Yeah, you weren't a guy with a wrestling background, and you kind of got thrown into this. And Zeke Jones, the man who has burned out more assistants than anybody in the history of USA Wrestling or Arizona State, was the head coach there at Penn. What was it like getting thrust into wrestling and having a guy as detail-oriented as Zeke Jones to deal with?
I think I'm extremely lucky to have had that year with Zeke, because I did not know an ounce of what I was doing. I'd been to one wrestling match in my entire life before to that point, and my boss calls me in my office and says, "You're going." And here's, I think, the interesting part is my first road trip with Penn Wrestling. The first event I had to work for them at all was at Arizona State. So Zeke, we had scheduled a quad meet out there, Arizona State, Army, and Grand Canyon, and Penn. And so he's like, "You're going with Zeke," and Rob Eiter, who was on our staff at the time as an assistant, who had also studied at Arizona State, when he was training. So we're going back to their alma mater. And I don't think I had any idea how big a deal it was for Zeke. But here we go across country, and I got to figure this thing out on the fly. And he was really good, and his staff he understood, I think, the more I knew about what I was talking about, the better reflection it would be of our program. And so they took a lot of time to explain the intricacies of the sport and the rules and what's important, and where to send our information and who to talk to, and people like yourself that are knowledgeable and they care about the sport and they're good to work with. I saw it as a great opportunity for myself, because here at Penn, wrestling is one of our top 5 or 6 sports in terms of notoriety and championships and national competition. So for an intern in his first year to get an opportunity to work with a team like that, we were just coming off of Matt Valenti winning 2 national titles. So it's, I felt like this was a great opportunity for me to grow in my profession, to work with a high profile program. And Zeke was demanding and had high visions for where Penn was going to go. And he ended up having a great opportunity at USA Wrestling to go for. And there's always a part of me that wonders what it would have been like just as I kept growing and getting better at what I was doing, how we might have matched up and really been able to promote and market what we're doing here. And I still see him every year, and it's great to kind of think about how far I've come in the sport from that first meeting in his office where he's trying to explain the difference between 3-point and 4-point near fall to me.
Yeah, at that time, 3 and 5, I guess, or no, actually, no, 4. It's not 4. It's 2 and 3. Excuse me. I'm thinking, what am I thinking right now, man? 3 and 5. What, changed, man? It's just crazy. I can't even get my rule right. Yeah. It's so anyway, the difference between 2 and 3. But as we move forward, what I've heard from, and you've seen this within the industry and in the sports information media relations world, is also a tight knit group similar to wrestling. What do you see as far as the similarities between those type of groups? We have a small organization with the National Wrestling Media Association that pales in comparison to how networked and connected COSIDA is, the College Sports Information Directors of America. When you look at the wrestling community and the COSIDA community, do you see any similarities?
Absolutely. I think they work. One of the reasons I enjoy being around the wrestling community so much is because of the passion of that group, and that's what we're like in COSIDA, the Collegiate Sports Information Directors of America. It's a lot of people that put a lot of time and effort and make a lot of sacrifices in their personal life to do what they do. And when they all get together in a room or at an event, they're really proud of what they've done. And they may not always be great recognition for it, but you're really proud of what you're doing. And I think just like the wrestling community kind of to continue to educate people, for us, for where I've looked at again in my career, starting out as somebody who did not really know much about sport, coming from up in Massachusetts. I was lucky to latch on to a few people internally and externally at other schools when I'd go to events like Midlands or Southern Stuffle or the NCAA championships, and to be able to observe and ask questions of what those guys were doing and those women were doing, and then start to model myself after them. And I think I'm almost flipped to a new point where now I've been there for 10 years and there's another next generation of SIDs or communications people coming through the sport, and I'm able to help, show them the ropes a little bit and, tell them good spots to be during matches and where to go and help in any way possible. And I enjoy that. That's, one of the best parts of my job is, the community aspects of it and the opportunity to give back to it and to help keep people interested. Because I think it's one of the things we go through in our profession is people get burned out and they move on, and they're always looking to try something different. And if we can make what we're doing now enjoyable, rewarding, and an opportunity to be really good at something, they're going to maybe stay with that sport and not always be chasing a different one to work with.
Yeah, I'm an affiliate member of COSIDA, and I get the magazine, whenever it comes out, and I'm sitting there looking through, and you see familiar names, and your name was actually mentioned in one of the features this past issue, and it kind of goes into a topic I want to talk about is the evolution of media and how somebody in your role, which is the media relations professional, you are the gatekeeper of information. At least that's how it used to be. Now, with so many different forms of social media, how has your position changed as it relates to wrestling? With 10 years ago, Twitter was just getting its start into college sports, and now it's a requirement that almost every team has to have their own account.
It's so different, and we laugh about it in our office. I remember my first year here, so 07, 08, one of my bosses at the time was on a webinar through COSIDA where they were showing us Twitter, and it was just in its infancy stage, but she got off that call and said, I don't know if this thing's going to catch on. I don't understand it. Like, we already have the internet. Why do we need this other thing? And we just laugh now at how much of what we do is based on how it plays or how social media can help accelerate it. And that's, I think it's great. I think we're able to now bring our programs right to our fans. Where we can reach out to them and interact with them in ways that coaches and marketers have probably long been dreaming about. And it's just such a great way to grow the sport, and it allows for creativity, allows for immediacy. So it's changed the way we have to think. There's probably no longer a true communication plan or a guarantee that if you're trying to do something, it's going to happen at exactly the time you want, because on Twitter, everything has to happen, super quick, and that's great, and it kind of gets the juices flowing there. But, I think the coverage of the sport, again, going back into it, you've been around it a lot longer than I have, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners, how difficult it was to get match result information in a timely manner. You're trying to figure out how the results of a dual meet or how a ranking's going to adjust, and you're waiting on a school in the West Coast to get you something in the East Coast time, and that's just so difficult. And now a coach, an SID, a manager, a backup wrestler, anybody can be live tweeting a match, and so there's almost too much information. But it's I think what's helped make wrestling so attractive to the ESPNs of the world and to the other media associations of the world is that you can educate people and you can show them good content, and the sport itself lends itself greatly to social media with a 15-second clip of a takedown or a pin or something like that. It plays right into what social media is all about, and it only accelerates the interest level in the sport.
Yeah, and now from the sports information aspect, you guys, so many of the COSIDA meetings, and even I was listening to David Gibson's SID cast when he's interviewing other people in sports information professionals about things that have changed. And now that just graphics have become such a thing, it's like, okay, what GIF, I mean, the argument over what do you call it and how much fun graphic. I mean, and you've been right there with the fun graphics. I mean, we've got the soup cans, we got one I'm not really a fan of, and I won't bring that one up, but you've been able to bring your pants creativity into this. And what goes into coming up with a good theme? You're like, hey, that's a good idea. I mean, is it all you, or are you stealing something from Matt Valenti?
Well, it's a combination of all of those things. I think it's having a true creative process, and I think for us at Penn, it starts with an openness from the coaching staffs going back to, back to Zeke's time in 07, 08, where Twitter wasn't a big thing, but he was always looking to create buzz. And when he left and Rob Eider took over, he had a trust in what I was doing and for the program and what my goals were, and he let me run with a lot of those things. And the same through with Alex Tirapelli. He was, he knew he had a good thing going and we had a pretty good brand we were building, and didn't want to interrupt that and let me kind of run free and work with the Matt Valentes and the Mike McMullins of the world on the assistant coach level who are in there on a day-to-day basis. But, having that creativity and not having someone serving as almost as an editor allows you to try new things. And that's been fun. I think, I've kind of built my niche with our Penn Wrestling Twitter account, and it's a lot to live up to in some regards, having to continue to be creative in that way. But I think it's fun, and for us, we've not had a national champion in 10 years. We've not won an EIWA championship since the early 2000s, and so how do we stay relevant? How do we stay in touch with the recruits we're trying to get? It's being funny. It's being involved in these conversations. It's being flashy with our graphics and videos, because that's what the young generation of wrestler wants to see. They want to envision themselves standing in that position, 3 years from now when they're a college athlete. We want to show them what it's all about here at Penn. You can have, you can have an entertaining time. You can have a successful wrestling career. You can have a successful academic career. We know when to be serious and when not to, but it's sports. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable and entertaining. And if we're asking our fans to have that experience but not making it part of what we do, then we're not doing the right thing. And so it's a lot of times I wonder if this will be funny, and I hope this is funny, and I hope people retweet it. And if not, Twitter is great because you're just on to the next thing. And, it won't have that long of a shelf life if it's not funny. So you just kind of throw some things against the wall and you find what works and try to keep doing that, but always push yourself to find something different. And you look around the coaching staffs around the country, there's a lot of coaches and their staffs that are just really buying into this, and they understand it's an arms race, so to speak, of who's got the best social media game, because you want to attract the next generation of talent. And if they feel like they're going to flourish and be loved and be supported and promoted in a great way to get to where their career goals are, that's social media is a great way to do that. And we wouldn't be doing our program the best service if we didn't utilize those avenues as best as we can.
Talked about the evolution of things that are new to the table, but what are some things that still are, I guess, paramount to an SID's job? We know that you've got to have a release, you got to get it posted, you got to get the score, you got to contact people, but what are some of the things that you believe make a media relations professional like yourself good at their jobs?
It's attention to detail in whatever that's going to be, whether it's the graphics and the new wave stuff, but also, just as important, if not more importantly, the statistical information that goes into keeping a wrestling season organized. We have 33 different teams and about 26 sports here at Penn, and I've worked with almost all of them at some point. And the nuts and bolts minutia of wrestling statistics is one of the most cumbersome, if not confusing, sports to work with. Everybody kind of knows what baseball is all about, and everybody knows soccer. And when you go into a wrestling world, there's, again, we stumbled over near fall points, and, that changes. And, trying to explain riding time and explain the match scoring of a team dual meet and how different points are awarded for different types of victories is a lot. But it's also, it's the core of the sport. You need to know who won by how much and how many times. And so I think, I know you go through it, and there's a lot of that, and, of making sure that box score at the bottom of a release or the top of a release, wherever you put it, is accurate, is super important, because we're a lot of times, I'll be the one that's putting the score from our results into the NWCA's system that helps track results, that leads to, the RPI, or leads to a wrestler's win-loss record that coaches look at when they're voting for the NCAA coaches panel. So it's a big responsibility. It's got to be right. Flipping the score one way or the other, somebody's record's different, maybe a coach doesn't vote for them, that conference doesn't get an automatic qualifying spot. You know what I mean? And if that's ever the case, like, that's a huge responsibility, and I'd be heartbroken if somebody on our team missed out on something, or on any team, because of a mistake I made. So you got to be dedicated to that. And that's where it all starts, I think, because if that's right, I always say, if the score's right, everything's right, and you got to pay attention to that.
Yeah, you talk about the statistical element of it, and that's one thing that I've learned with my experiences with new sports information people, because Division I wrestling has a high turnover. You're actually one of the stalwarts that have been there for a while, but I'm seeing probably 30-35% turnover each year in Division I on who's handling the wrestling for those specific teams. But Stat Crew, for those who are unaware, is kind of a multi-sports type of statistical engine. First, how has that changed the game for sports information professionals, and how difficult is it to go through a situation where you realize, okay, we have people coming in that are familiar with Stat Crew, but wrestling doesn't have that. We have track wrestling. We don't have Stat Crew.
Sure. Stat Crew for us is a game changer, and it's a lifesaver, because that it's a mandatory kind of requirement for every football game that's played in the country. Is uses the same statistical software. The files look the same, and you're able to translate. If I work at Penn doing football, I could go work at Alabama and get the statistical part of that job correct day one. There's obviously other things that are involved in it, but I think that's a very basic core requirement for anyone in our profession. And what it really allows for is up to date and really all-encompassing statistical reports for the NCAA or the Ivy League or whatever the conference to put out, so that fans can know who's the best and who's having success, and they can talk about storylines and things like that going into a game. And the post-game procedures are the same for everyone around the country, so you just know what you're doing. And wrestling, even coming again in the 10 years that the improvements in track wrestling and other statistical software types has allowed for some immediate live stats for fans to follow and things like that. But there's always a concern. We talk about it as our sports information professionals with this sport of, it's not a uniform way of doing things, and there's no mandatory requirements that every home match or dual meet has to be done this way. It's hard to sit there and track how many takedowns a wrestler has over the course of the season, because it's hard to do it like electronically. If you have a manager that's tracking everything that goes on, you can get there, but I don't have true faith in our opponent's stats as well. So it's hard to sit there and do that breakdown that you can do with a football or a basketball game or something like that, because we haven't gotten everyone in a room. We haven't gotten everyone on the same page. And it's something I think is vital to the growth of the sport from that television standpoint, of being able to say, not only are these two wrestlers ranked number 3 and 4 in the country, but nobody has more takedowns than these two guys in the country. This is going to be a clinic. It's all very much hearsay or hypotheses. And, I'd like to see people figure that out. And, a long time ago, Stat Crew was made to be the place for that in about half of the sports that we work with. And, wrestling could, I think, do itself a lot of help by making some decisions in that regard, or otherwise you're just everyone's going to have their own way of doing things, and it's hard to put the best product together from a promotional standpoint.
Yeah, do you see that from maybe the format wars? I don't want to say it's like a VHS beta, but we see this with Flow Arena and track wrestling. We've seen it with previously Escape Sports, which is now part of Flow, and Kreider's tournament software is still floating around. With the formats, and some people wanting free market, some people saying the other style should be mandated. Where do you fall in terms of, are you in lines like, well, you got to pick one, or do you think it should be open to figure out, okay, if you guys we can have 2 or 3 figure out and sync up? Is that, where do you think this should be?
It's, I think you pick one and you go with it. Just because again, you're talking about people in our profession that they just kind of need to know what to do, and it needs to become almost second nature to them. And so to have it be, for this meet, we're doing it one way, and for the next meet, the other school does it another way. So you're going to get a file that you can't just automatically upload into your software. You got to take it out and redo it yourself. That doesn't help anyone get done what I would like to kind of see happen. So it's, there's in our business, everything goes from Stat Crew, and then our website may present it differently than Princeton's, than Penn State's, than Iowa's, based off of how it deploys. But again, it's not, the stats aren't run through ESPN.com. We send what we do to ESPN.com for football. The media site gets it from the school, and it's all kind of run through Stat Crew. And again, a lot of that stuff is open to the viewer. It's not a paywall thing. This is basic information. We're not asked if you want to watch the video. Sometimes you have to go behind the paywall. But if you just want to know what's going on, it's a very easily accessed file, and it looks good and it updates, and you're able to follow along on your phone, on your computer, on a tablet, wherever you are to get the information. And I think it's gotten a lot better. We're down to maybe 2 or 3 places that are doing it, and I think I've had really positive experiences with all the different stat programs, and I think it's they're all getting to a point where they're really, really good at what they're doing. But it's just something you want to, it makes it a lot easier logistically for the NCAA, for a conference, for a school, if you just know this is the place that these things run. And again, we hosted an NCAA women's lacrosse tournament game here a couple weeks ago, and I did the stats on my computer through the Stat Crew software, and then I have a system that's just checkbox where it needs to go. And I could send it to the NCAA's website, I could send it to our website, I could send it to the schools playing in the games website, I could send it to ESPN.com if I needed to. So there's ways I could make everything from our computer in the Palestra during a home meet go to every major news outlet in the country on their website at that time if we wanted to. It's just kind of getting the process in place and saying this is the way it's going to be done, from whether it's the NWCA or the NCAA or whoever it is. I think it'll help fans know where to go for information and not have to guess every Saturday.
So as we move forward into the world of news that is sports information, you've got a head coaching vacancy there, and you are, again, kind of the gatekeeper. But even the world of wrestling, secrets aren't really secrets because people knew about Tirapelli leaving before you even had to put out the release. And when you look at in that situation, you've gone through now 3 coaches. What is your role when it comes to this situation? How much can you tell? Where are you involved in the hiring process, or what do you know about this process? And plus, you've got 2 former wrestling coaches that are in administration there too, so it's unique. So where is Chaz Dorman's role when it comes to the new hire here?
It's like you said, it is a unique situation, and I think my job is to let the administration know what the best course of action is from a public relations standpoint when possible, and I think I'm in a good vantage point with the sport of wrestling, to be specific, because of my 10 years in the sport and the connections I have with media members and other folks inside the sport. I know how tight the community is, so I know that if we're maybe thinking we're going to hold something for a little bit, that it probably isn't going to hold as long as we would like. So it's better to be proactive and know how to get that done when I need to. And I think that's all someone in our position is there for, is to just kind of give the advice from a PR standpoint, and then once we kind of get word of where the direction is going, I'll start to work on our press release. I'll start to work on graphics. I'll start to work on potential videos if that's possible, so that when we have a time in place of this is the deadline of when we're going live, that I have everything ready to go, so that it can get out to the media folks like yourself, that it can go to the forums, it can get up on our social media, it can get up on our website, and that we kind of control as much of the story as we can. But in wrestling, it's a lot harder than it might be in some other sports, and I think these last couple weeks here, it's been, for me, kind of educating some of the folks in our office of just how tight-knit the wrestling community is, and how, in other sports with other hires, you might have a 10 to 12 hour window to get some things done. But with wrestling, it's so passionate about any morsel of news and information that the people are going to talk about it. And I think reminding folks of the presence that this program has on a national scope, where we're one of the oldest programs, and where we've had a lot of success, and we've had Hall of Famers and Olympic champions and national champions. And, we work with the Pennsylvania Regional Training Center that has a high profile coach and some high profile athletes that are developing towards Olympic contenders. So people are paying attention here. This is a really important place, and any coaching changes around Penn resonate. So we need to, this isn't a time for us to think people aren't paying attention. We need to be ready and allow me to do my job of contacting people I have relationships with and trying to get the word out in the way that we would like it to, but also, just being ready to go if something goes opposite the way we would like it to and go from there. But it's, I think in a weird way, these types of situations is what people in my spot kind of live for. We're there for big moments, whether it's winning a national title or knocking off the number one team in the country or doing coaching announcements or recruit announcements or things like that. This is what we train for, and it's what we're hired to do. So let us do our job, and we're going to give you a good effort.
Before we let you roll here, there's something unique about Penn and the city of Philadelphia as it comes with Division I wrestling. It's not just the Palestra, which was one of the most iconic gyms in college sports, which name it means wrestling gymnasium, even though it's pretty much known for basketball. But the nuance with Philadelphia is how many steps is it from Penn to Drexel? And you got two Division I teams that close in the battle for the cheesesteak trophy. I mean, that's kind of morphed into its own little thing, a social media contest as well.
Yeah, it's super unique. It's the shortest road trip in Division I collegiate athletics, no matter the sport. It's less than a mile. I think it's officially 0.7 of a mile door to door from the Palestra to the DAC where the Dragons wrestle. And it's I think a couple of years ago when Rob Eiter and Matt Azevedo kind of got together and realized that why are we not taking advantage of this? We're in the same conference now. We're so close. Philadelphia is a passionate tribal community where everyone loves a good Philadelphia battle. The Big Five is huge for basketball and things like that. Let's try to make something special here. And cheesesteaks are obviously a well-known item and one of the delicacies, so to speak, you have to get when you come to Philadelphia. And so we put that all together, and it's been a great rivalry. We won the first couple at Penn, and Drexel's got the last two, and so it's something we compete against. And it's really interesting because we work together so closely on the regional training center. Our college athletes train with those professionals, those freestyle guys, and we go out into the community with the Police Athletic League and beat the streets and our athletes together so often that it's a nice way to kind of cap the regular season by getting all those people into a gym and having some youth matches. And this year we had freestyle exhibitions, and it's a really good celebration of Philadelphia wrestling, but also with a definite competitive edge because we're competing for EIWA titles against each other, and we're recruiting against each other. But we try to sell that the wrestling is important in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. There's two ways to be a really successful collegiate wrestler if you're from this area. Stay close to home, get great educations, and compete at a high level. You can do all that while having some fun. And it's definitely a friendly rivalry and one that we enjoy celebrating at the end of each regular season before the things get super serious in March.
So as we stay on the cheesesteak, this will be our last question. So if you're coming into Philadelphia and you are looking for a cheesesteak, you have two options here. If you need something quick, where do you go? And if you have all the time in the world and you want a cheesesteak, where are you going? So what's quick and what's your preference?
If you need something quick, you go to one of the food trucks. It's a kind of a Philadelphia thing. I think we might have started it. I know New York has those hot dog vendors and things like that, but in Philadelphia, food trucks and food carts are a way of life. And we have a great one right in front of the Palestra, run by a gentleman named Billy, and he's a big fan of the wrestling team. He's got our posters and magnets all over his cart, and he does a really good, whether it's chicken or beef steak. Those are quick, they're affordable. It's you can get one and keep walking down the street, and that's a big staple. You got to hit one of those up. And if you get some time to invest, I'm a fan of Jim's Steaks down on South Street. I think it's a good environment. They make a good cheesesteak, but you can't go wrong anywhere. Abner's on our campus is the one that sponsors the trophy that we compete for, and they're a great place to go, and we work really well with them, and they make a good cheesesteak as well. So I can't not thank them for that. But they're up on 40th Street. But if you're looking to go to the local tourist type place, I recommend Jim's. That's my spot.
Yeah, Abner's is one that Jack Childs actually brought me a steak from a couple years ago when I was actually living in Pennsylvania and on Drexel's campus. And then All-Star Classic, me and Shane Sparks. I'm saying, okay, and Brian Hazard, like, okay, we're going over here to Abner's, okay? This is where we're going. Yep. And Shane had never had a cheesesteak. So he was like, I tell you, Bryant, this is great. So we're good to go.
Yeah, I do deliveries as well. I confirmed that, it was about 6 or 7 years ago at this time, we were playing in the women's lacrosse Final Four down in Maryland, and the SID at Towson was the host school. He asked for a cheesesteak, and so I went and bought one from the food truck that I was talking about and put it on the front dash of our car, and we drove it from Philly to Baltimore and had it right there staying warm under the sunlight and delivered it to him in the press box. So, if it's doable, if people are looking for one, I'm happy to take orders and bring a little Philly to wherever you might be.
Yeah, see, I was just hoping Scott Goodale at Rutgers was listening to this because he still owes me one of those grease truck sandwiches, but I think they've shut down the grease trucks down at Rutgers. But that's New Jersey. That's not Pennsylvania. So, Chaz, appreciate the time. PennAthletics.com. You can check it out. Penn Wrestling on Twitter. One of the guys who really makes covering this sport fun, and somebody who's definitely come a long way in not knowing what a takedown was to winning the Media Association's SID of the year. So, Chaz, 1, congratulations, and 2, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. Is it okay if I say I'm still a card-carrying member of Team Pinfall? Is that allowed? Am I going to get in trouble?
I hate you so very much right now.
That just harkens back to, I think it's a great, you got to have some fun. I think it's one of my favorite arguments that people have because everyone's right. And, it brings everyone together.
Yeah, everybody's right if it was 1951. But, see, this is my show. I can get the last word on this. I can just cut out anything else you say and retort. But anyway, at least some people take it seriously. Some people not so seriously. I like how you take it not so seriously. I can't say the same for myself. But anyway, Chad, thanks for coming on. Of course, you had to slide that in there.
Absolutely, Jason. I'll look forward to seeing everyone in November when the season starts up again.
Listening to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast with my daddy, Jason Bryant.
Chaz Dorman, the man with the shamrock pants. You can see that on the front page of MadTalkOnline.com, episode 332. So MadTalkOnline.com/332. You can see a picture of Chaz and his shamrock pants from Madison Square Garden at the NCAAs in 2016, just for photographic evidence that this man has a fashion sense beyond words. I'd like to thank you again for listening to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. If you are a regular listener to this program, thank you, and thank you for subscribing via iTunes. It's actually now called Apple Podcasts, so it's not called iTunes anymore as far as the podcast app goes. It's still called iTunes on your computer, but on your phone, it would be the Apple Podcast app. So if you haven't done so already and you have an iOS device and you would like to subscribe to said program, which is this program, go to MadTalkOnline.com/GetShortTime. It will take your phone right to the Apple Podcast app where you can click the one button, subscribe, and you will get each and every show of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast sent to your phone automatically. Now, if you don't like iTunes or Apple Podcasts, you can do this on your iOS device by going to MadTalkOnline.com/iOS app. That's APP, and it'll give you the exclusive Short Time podcast app that is specifically for your iOS device. And don't worry, folks, if you've got an Android out there, if you've got a Samsung Galaxy that doesn't explode, you can go to MadTalkOnline.com/Android app and get the same. Don't want to listen on your phone? That's fine. MadTalkOnline.com. You've got plenty of different ways to listen and subscribe each and every week to this, the flagship program of the Mad Talk Podcast Network. Added a new show to the network via Track Wrestling and their podcast. Eric Olenowski is bringing us the Blue Chip Recruiting Podcast as part of Track Wrestling's feed. That show also available at MadTalkOnline.com and TrackWrestling.com. His first two shows have been big ones. He's had Gable Steveson of Apple Valley, Minnesota, and Spencer Lee of Franklin Regional, Pennsylvania. Gable going to the University of Minnesota after his senior year, and Spencer Lee bound for the University of Iowa. Eric does a solid job on ESPN3 and has been a mat side commentator and a past winner of the National Wrestling Media Association's Broadcaster of the Year. Other things as we move forward. So I have tried for weeks to get the Boise State Athletic Director, Mr. Kurt Aspie, on this program. I have gone through the traditional channels like I had Chaz Dorman on my show today for Penn. I would go through Joe Nickel, the Sports Information Director at Boise State, to get that interview request. That interview request was denied as, quote, Mr. Aspie had nothing more to add to the discussion as president, their Boise State president has said all that needs to be said. Well, guess what? There's not all that needs to be said, and I've tried 3 different times going through the traditional means, and the last week, I sent an email directly to Mr. Aspie requesting his presence on this program to actually answer the numerous questions that remain about Boise State dropping wrestling. This is not going away, folks, and I'm going to give Mike Randles a shout-out. He's a coach up in Idaho and has been a Facebook friend of mine, and he was actually, back in the day, was a contributor to when I was running Intermat about Idaho's high school wrestling. This guy has been all over Idaho wrestling for years, really cares, and I've seen through his Facebook presence, and then there's also the Save BSU Wrestling Twitter feed. So make sure you get out there and put pressure on these administrators that if you're in Idaho, you're a taxpayer, this is affecting your tax dollars. You had no say in this. The student body had no say in this. 2 people can come in and say, we're dropping wrestling, end of discussion, you can't say anything about it. That's not how the public school system works. That's not how the state education system works. So if you're an Idaho resident, check out Save BSU Wrestling on Twitter. Find out how you can do it. And I'm going to keep pressing to get this AD who is running from this interview. He's running from every interview. It's not just me, but they have been devoid of any such media presence to answer for their decision to drop this program. If I make a decision and I say, all right, I'm going to just stop doing this, yeah, if in a private company, I can do that. But you are dependent upon tax money, okay? Your job is paid for by the citizens of Idaho. And if you don't answer to them, what good is your job? You're not doing your job. So guess what? I'm going to keep on this, folks. The only people who have ever denied interview requests with me over the years, they've had something to hide. They've absolutely had something to hide, or they just want to sweep this under the rug and hope it goes away. Let's think about the people who have denied requests that I've had over the years. Pat Kilkenny, the University of Oregon. This guy was the number 2 booster at the school, didn't have a degree, and then he basically bought his job. Denied my request. Funny. Little shady there. Trev Alberts dropped Nebraska Omaha Wrestling the night they won their 3rd Division II championship, the night they won the championship. Trev Alberts denied all interview requests. Thomas Bay at Fresno State, he's been reassigned and then let go of the school. So we can kind of figure that out. Grand Canyon University, private for-profit institution, said, nope, we're done. They're a private entity. They can do what they want. They didn't say, you know what, we're cutting it. That's the end of the story. So Don Lemish, Longwood College in Virginia, yeah, every single one of these ADs have had something to hide. I will give credit to guys like Bill DeAndre at Anderson who came out and said, yep, we're not going to do this. We're not going to pay for this. At Anderson, they dropped it. He came on the show, owned it, didn't really make a great account of himself, honestly. John Perry at Cleveland State, we kind of shot through those arguments here on this program. But you know what? They came on the show. They answered for their decisions. Boise State, you are running. You haven't done this. And Mike Randles and your crew up there in Idaho, stay on it, stay on it, stay on it. There's a lot more to this story than what they want you to believe. There's a lot more to this story than that they're going to tell you. I believe the Mountain West Conference had something to do with this. There's rumblings that this has been in the works for years, and you're hiring a guy to fundraise and you're setting him up to fail. What kind of business if you were in a business world and you're hiring somebody to fail so you can cut something, that is a poor indication of leadership on your part because you let it get to this part. You want to sit there and blame participation, which is a fallacy because there's just as many baseball teams as there are wrestling teams in Idaho. The participation is very similar. You want to blame Mountain West, conference alignment, whatever. You've been trying to get to the Pac-12 for years, okay? Don't feed us a line of bull crap and don't expect to get asked questions for it, okay? You know what? I'm going to keep on it. I'm going to keep on it and keep on it. Mike Randles, you guys up in Idaho, keep on it. They're ignoring me. I'm not going to go away. I'm going to keep trying, but they're going to keep ignoring me. But they're not going to ignore the taxpayers of the state of Idaho. Keep at it, folks. That's all I got for you on Short Time today. If you like this program, you like the Matt Talk Podcast network of shows, you can contribute to this network and keep the lights on. Keep it, I guess, to borrow the term from one of my favorite shows, Court Killers, loud, live, and independent, because I get loud. We don't really do it live that often. I have done a live show here and there, but independent as far as that goes. MattTalkOnline.com/join the team, or go to Patreon.com/MattTalkOnline. A lot of things that can happen with there. I can develop new shows. I can furnish out this studio and bring you better quality content with your contributions. MattTalkOnline.com. And I want to stop and say something about Compound real quick. They are our exclusive gear sponsor of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. Those of you who are patrons have received the Super Soft T-shirt. We've got the hats coming. I got a whole new crew coming. Now, let me tell you something about this. Their business hours list till like, I think 4 o'clock or maybe 6 o'clock East Coast time. So last week I'm getting the shirts set up to bring in the next group of shirts. And Kim from Compound calls me up, and I'm sitting there playing Dr. Mario with my wife, and I've told you about how much I like playing the old Nintendo games. Well, I look down, and it's like Friday afternoon at like 7 o'clock Central Time. Took the effort to continue working on a Friday to make sure that my order was coming through. So you want this type of customer service. You want quality customer service. Compound, cmpteamwear.com. They're going to get you straight. The two-piece thing is optional. Well, guess what? They're ready for it. We're going to have Cliff Fretwell of Compound on the show here soon to talk about the singlet debate when it comes to him as a youth club coach and a specific club coach and as a gear provider. What's this mean for them? Well, guess what? Cliff's going to come on and talk about it. I can tell you right now, I am pleased with the gear they have provided this network with, and has been a long-time friend. We're coming up on our 20-year mark of how long we've known each other. In cmpteamwear.com, Compound Clothing. Get your team outfitted. They will go the extra mile for you. That's all I got. Thank you for spending your time with me, because you've always got time for short time.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.